does not exist anymore. And so it's just going to be Facebook and YouTube for as long as we can do Facebook and YouTube. But I'm working on getting everything ported over now to Odyssey, and apparently they just released live streaming capacity. So I think pretty soon Odyssey will be our ultimate destination. I think we'll keep doing Facebook and YouTube as long as we can, but I'm going to start treating Odyssey like our base of support.
Well, the truth is in the Odyssey, not the destination. So
yes, thank you, Homer. So okay, so share with the class as we're waiting for people to get in here. Share with the class about what just happened.
I'm too emotional to even talk about it. I did just sell all my camera equipment though, in case you can't tell.
Yeah, how's that feel?
That's pretty good. It feels actually feels really good.
Yeah.
Feels amazing to not have a camera. Yeah, and then the next time anyone asks me for video work, I can just like bill them to rent like the cameras that I used to like own and stuff like that. That'll feel good.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, it's a nice little passive aggressive way of just kind of being frustrated with the fact that like I don't think I get paid enough to do video work. Basically, is what it would be.
Well, I know that every time I've seen someone start a video podcast or have a business that involves lots of video, I know that the first thing they usually do is sell all their video equipment.
Yeah. No, I'm gonna probably buy like another one that's like way more expensive, but I'm waiting on. I still think the money comes from my daddy. The money still comes from Trump, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, that's right.
But as soon as Daddy sends me my belated Christmas present, it'll probably be something even more expensive. Because that's just how it goes with cameras.
Yeah, I'm fortunate that Jason gave me the equipment to use once we had to start doing it from home. So he was super generous. He gave me. I have a computer that I use just for streaming the show and stuff. So I'm able to use that as a second computer while I'm streaming from my computer. And then I got the camera and I got a couple lights and stuff that were from him. So I lucked out that way. But pretty soon here I'll get some more stuff.
I've been listening to a lot of Jason Stapleton, and I've been practicing an impression that I'm not ready to reveal to anybody just yet. But but I like.
It's good.
So you've heard me do it.
if you've followed Jason for any length of time, you should recognize it right away, and it is funny. Amy can vouch.
That's premium content.
Yeah.
That's for the supporting members group only.
Yep. They're the only ones who get access to your impressions, period.
That's right. Yeah, and it's just because I don't really only do impressions and stuff like that, because if I'm telling a story, ever since I was a wee lad, I just wanted to like do the voice of whoever was speaking. So it wasn't me speaking. I was relating what they were saying, and I wanted to be authentic about it. And then one thing led to another, and all of a sudden I was just very capable of doing impressions that like nobody cared about. It's just people that 1,000 people at the absolute most might have ever met. But like I could never do anything that was that'd be well known, or anything that was like able to be parlayed into an actual skill or talent.
So you can do all the niche. You can do all the niche people, but nobody mainstream.
And it's like, oh, that really is that really is Joe from the cigar shop, isn't it? Oh yeah. Kills up and down fucking Route 9,
You're like the ultimate hipster voice impressionist. You don't do anybody cool. Man. You do all the stuff that nobody knows about.
That's right. Yeah, get out of here with your Jack Kennedy.
I have a buddy that he was one of my college roommates that does very good impressions. He does, and he practices all the different mainstream ones. He's especially good with Family Guy impressions. His Stewie is very good. And then he's got a couple other ones that are good too. Shout out Mac. We lived together in college. We're both approximately the same height. At the time, we both had the same hairstyle. We both had the same goatee. And his name is Matt, and my name is Mac. See, I just did it. His name is Mac, and my name is Matt. And everybody always called me Mac, and they called him Matt.
You do look like a Mac.
Yeah.
I will say.
I was almost a
Yeah.
I was almost a Joshua.
Yeah. I was almost a Luke. How cool would that have been?
Luke. So we could have been Joshua and Luke instead of Matt and Steven.
It really would have gone on brand.
Well, all 4 names are biblical, so.
Suppose they are. Yeah,
Yeah.
but Luke.
One of the apostles.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
God, that would have been so dope.
Okay, so yeah, it looks like everything is streaming well here. Shouted out everything on Twitter. Okay. So welcome aboard, folks. This is another episode of King Pilled. This is kind of an unusual time for us to do this. Typically, we stream the show on Monday and Thursday at somewhere between 12:30 and 1 Pacific time. But this week, on Thursday, I had to go with Amy. We had to go into LA to Jason Stapleton's house so we could do our 90-day sprint, where every quarter we come together and meet for several hours and go over the previous quarter and set our vision for the upcoming quarter. So that ended up being an all-day ordeal. We left at 8 o'clock and we got home at 6:45 or 7, I think. So that meant no show yesterday. And then we initially planned on doing it earlier this afternoon, but Steven wound up having this camera selling adventure.
That's right.
And so we pushed it to this evening. So thank you, folks, for
if anyone
those
wants
of you
a kidney, by the way.
You have an extra kidney?
Yeah, couple, actually.
That's a pretty good deal. You got
Yeah.
you got like
Buy
the
one, get
camera
one.
package deal, and you got the bonus kidney thrown in.
Damn right.
That's the way a mobster does business. Liberal Luke. So anyway, so for those of you who are watching us live here, thank you. We appreciate you. Do us a favor and give us a like and then subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And then if you could share the show, share it while it's live here right now. Get someone else in here to hear what we have to say about Klaus Schwab and Matt. I don't know if it's Matt Gaetz or Matt Gaetz. I never watch TV.
Nobody knows.
So okay.
Nobody knows.
So I'm just gonna say Gaetz because I think it's Gaetz. So Klaus Schwab, Matt Gaetz, and Delta Airlines. We're gonna talk about what they have to do with the future of America. And those I also put those into the subject line because it makes this show timely. So I did it for the sake of SEO.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
How do you spell that goofy last name?
Gaetz.
Is it one of those
It's an AE.
You want to know what? I'm not a real big fan of the AE. I don't think we do that here. You know what I mean? And he's not like exotic enough that he gets like a pass on that. That's just a normal regular ass white guy. You want to know what? You know, get your dumb name said? Gaetz. That's how you get your dumb name said if you have an A and an E. You have to change it.
Gaetz.
It's Getz. That's it. Otherwise, it gets said how it's spelled in America.
Well, it's funny. Like that
I'm
sort of idea sounds
nonsense.
kind of crazy to us. Like just randomly changing your name like that. But actually, it was like used to be super common. Like even just last century, there was plenty of people during the war who relocated to another country and just straight up changed their name completely and just like started over. But now it seems kind of weird. Now the only people who randomly change their names are like weird niche, or not niche, but weird like kind of bizarre celebrities like Meta World Peace.
Oh God, that's great. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a huge fan, by the way. Huge fan
of Meta World Peace. What's his name now?
Yeah. I don't know, but he'll I can call him whatever he wants. He ran into the stands and tried to rip someone's head off or something like that.
Wasn't that
him?
His name, yes, that is him. The old it was
back in the old days.
Indiana. It was the Pacers and someone
and
Pistons, big brawl. Yeah, Ron Artest. Now he's Meta Sandiford Artest. So
I like it.
I don't know what that means. Anyways,
synthesis.
So what we're going to talk about, what I almost called this episode was something like the privatization of America, but then I wanted something that was a little more SEO friendly. So I just threw some.
It's a libertarian paradise.
Exactly, and that's kind of the undertone of the episode is the fact that all of this is going to be happening. Like America is going to begin to be privatized, and there's a lot. It's already very evident that there's a lot of libertarians, or even not not just libertarians, but like ANCAPs, who are going to get 100% suckered in by this whole thing. They're going to find themselves on the landing on the wrong side of yet another issue. So you can see the groundwork being laid for it, but to really truly understand it, you kind of have to dig a little bit. And this guy here he was one of the big people kind of started learning his name over the last few months as the term the Great Reset started being bandied about. But I mean, he's like a meme. He's like the perfect supervillain. His name is Klaus Schwab. He's like a bald guy with kind of squinty eyes who dresses like a Star Wars character. And I mean, he might as well just carry around a cat everywhere with him that he's constantly like petting and like purring to. Like that's basically the type of guy. He has some thoughts, and he happens to be the guy who founded or created the World Economic Forum, which is, I like to call them the people who tell governments what to do, because governments take their marching orders, politicians take their marching orders from NGOs. Like it's funny that they call them they call them so it's the NGOs. I can't remember what I was going to say, but these NGOs are the things that they call them non-government organizations. It's kind of interesting that they identify them that way. It's like, what do you do? Oh, we're a non-government organization.
That's like those fucked up candy, the non-parallels or whatever. It's just like, just tell me what you are.
Yeah.
You know, don't tell me what you're not.
Yes. Don't identify me as what you're not, because that doesn't tell me what you are. What is it that you do? And if somebody called them professional lobbying organizations, that's that's a tougher industry to make your name in. You know, if someone's like, oh, you know, what do you do? Oh, I'm a professional lobbyist. That's not a really good way to get ahead in life in social circles. No, it's better if you work for an NGO. You know, I just work for an NGO. You know, we're working on a project in the Congo. You know, it's
definitely not the government, though.
Definitely,
we're so totally not the government.
It's like
you need to know this.
We're working on a project in the Congo. Oh, who are you working with? Not the government.
Not the government.
No, definitely not the government. We do not work. It's in our name. Non-government organization.
That's how you know.
Exactly. So obviously, once you just kind of do even the most minor iota bit of like research, you realize very quickly that the U.S. government is run by non-government organizations. Non-government organizations are they're like the filtering mechanism between the academy, the sciences, the elite cultivation schools, and the government. If you want to get a role in the government, you filter yourself through the NGOs. If you want to get policy accomplished, you filter it through an NGO. So the NGO is just, you know, it's super impartial. You know, we're just in the business of charity and improving the world and, you know, and bringing peace on earth. You know, that's, you know, two super innocuous things. And what we do is we consult the experts. You know, we talk to the scientists. We get the science, and we put the science into reports. And then we produce these reports. They're very formal and official. They're on letterhead. You know, they have signatures. Like, you get a whole bunch of people, they all sign them at the bottom. So these are very serious reports that we went and we consulted the oracles of the gods and brought back their commands. We brought back the oracle's instructions for us. And so it's very, very experty. It's very science. And so we do the science, and the politicians come and ask us for our recommendations. We recommend, you know, this is it. It just so happens that every recommendation that we give happens to suit the interests of the people who financed our studies. It's this crazy dynamic where someone pays for a study and the study magically helps the person who paid for it. It's kind of a crazy concept, but it's very formal and official and nonpartisan. There's nothing to worry about. And now, so then we're the people who are the consultants for the legislation, and then the legislation that's based on our transmissions from the oracles of the gods. That legislation is imposed at the point of a gun, and this is the way that the modern structure works. So if you want to understand what the guys with the guns are going to do, go find the people who are telling them what to do and listen to them, because they'll tell you. Because that's a crazy thing. They speak in all this coded language, but they speak. They talk, they tell you. They tell you exactly what they're working on. They tell you exactly what they're planning to do, because they have to signal to anybody else who might need to be involved in contributing to their effort. But they have to signal politely. So you can't say, we're working on, you might say we're working on sustainability, instead of saying we're working on figuring out how to depopulate the planet. Or you talk about we're working on climate change research to hide the fact that you're actually trying to depopulate the planet. Really, what you find is that every single one of their projects kind of traces back to depopulating the planet.
Always kind of comes back to depopulating the planet, doesn't it?
Always. It just so happens that it just keeps being depopulated. It's like, man, all you guys can talk about is depopulating the planet. It's kind of crazy. Why would you want to do that? What would be your motive? Like, your motivation is to save the planet. Like, for what? Save the planet for who? Oh, for you. Oh, you want to depopulate the planet and save it from the stain of humanity so that you can populate it. What's that? You're working on aging as well. You're figuring out how to live forever. Oh, okay. Is that going to be part of the universal basic income? Like, when I get my universal basic income, I also get the super top secret stuff about how to live forever, right? You've discovered utopia, where people can live forever and also get a universal. Oh, no. The people who get the UBI don't get the live forever serum. I guess. Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess that's a choice that you could make. When the people who are getting the UBI find out that there's a live forever serum, they're probably gonna want it, and it's gonna be kind of hard to buy them off, since that's like the holy, like literally the holy grail. You have eternal life, and you're buying people off with $2,000 a month. Well, that's probably going to make them pretty upset. I have a feeling they're probably going to get kind of cranky when they find that out. So I guess you have to just ensure that the entire world's armies are all beholden to you. I guess the way you would do that then is you would take a corporate state and you would make it effectively the world government. Our military bases everywhere, every single country, especially the people who are the people who are most likely to challenge your purposes. Those ones are going to get the biggest military presence, right? It's going to be right outside them, because we got to be careful, because they threaten the stability of the earth. So, I guess maybe you would get yourself to that point. You would figure out which project would get you to that point. So maybe if you have like, you're trying to restrain your opposition until you get your plan in place. So you would get two different parties, and you would make it look like each of the parties would get kind of part of the pie, but you would make them fight over it. Because if you have just one party, then people kind of sniff the game out quicker. So you get two parties and you'd have people fight over it. People naturally going to want to create more parties, but you would create filtering mechanisms that would prevent those third and fourth and fifth and sixth parties from actually like cracking up to the level of all the others and becoming a viable option. And I mean, once you control them, if you control the banks, then you can kind of control just about anything. So that may be presumably the way that you would do that. So you get these two that are fighting against each other, and over time you'd gradually move to grasp more and more of this system. And once you basically were pretty close to having a stranglehold on it, then you could just use one political party to take out the other one and have like a single political party standing. So once you did that, well, the political party ostensibly controls the guns. The guns are all over the world. you control the political part, so you control the guns. So if I had money and a desire to worship Lucifer, I probably would do the same thing. I'd probably be working this out exactly the same way. But if I was to suggest something like that in polite society, that would not go over well. People in polite society would not want to consider the possibility that something like that might be in the works, or might be, that people would ever, nobody would ever think that way. If there's one thing about Earth's history, about human history on the Earth, it is people never set their designs on conquering the entire world and trying to live forever. People, like, there's no humans ever who have ever tried to do that. It just never happens. So there's no reason to think that they would try to do it now. It's a non-governmental organization. It's like, it's in the name. They don't want to govern. They're just doing science. Okay, anyways, I'll drop the character. That was kind of fun though. So
it was fun.
So this is Klaus Schwab. Klaus Schwab is one of these guys. This is who he is. And he doesn't really get out much. And it's kind of funny. Like he's the perfect meme. Like he is an archetype. When you look at him, you're like, of course that's who he is. Look at him. He should be the type of idea that would become a global sensation immediately. But his face kind of starts getting out there. You just get like a taste of him, just an introduction, and all the conversation about it dies. Nobody's talking about him. No more headlines. There was just a little whoop there for a minute and got some headlines, and now it's gone. Nobody's talking about him whatsoever. Why? The guy with his connections to the pandemic and the conversations he's having about stakeholder capitalism. This is a guy who should be thrust into the spotlight. This is a guy that everybody would be interested in and interested in hearing from. But people just don't really talk about him. What's interesting, though, is that he's very close with Bill Gaetz. And Bill Gaetz does a lot of this. But Bill Gaetz is saying the exact same things as Klaus Schwab, effectively. They're both like same wavelength. They're dialed in together. But Bill Gaetz is the public face. He's the one that goes out and does all the talking. Why? Because people have positive associations with Bill Gaetz, and he seems harmless. Yeah. That too. Yeah, I mean, if he's your type, then yeah. But Bill Gaetz seems harmless. Like, Bill Gaetz is not. He's a nerd. Nobody's threatened by a nerd. People are threatened by a guy who looks like a mashup of a Bond villain and a Star Wars master, like Sith Lord. He's like, that guy's probably pretty threatening to people, but not the guy who, might as well still be wearing a pocket protector. So, but if you just start, people want to come to these sorts of conversations and they want to apply a narrative onto it. So like one way or the other. But if you just sit back and you just kind of just take your presumptions out of it and just map out the data points of these two characters in particular. There's a whole bunch of others, but just map out the data points of what they're talking about, when they're talking about them, what's happening after they talk about them, then what's happening next. What are these trends? What are these trajectories? You don't need to know the destination necessarily. Just track the trajectory. Track the angles that they're taking. And think of yourself, if you were them and you had the belief system that they do, what would you be motivated to do? And just let your mind do that and let it go where it's going to go. Figure out where you wind up. But I think that it's absolutely ridiculous to think that the caricature that I just described doesn't describe these guys exactly. Like, this is what they're angling for. So under that, when you understand that there's a force behind every major global government, like, think about how anybody gets into a position of power in the government. Think about the forces that finance that, the forces that facilitate that, the people who are involved in that. They have to have media companies. The media companies establish the narrative. they get to move the narrative forward, with the exception of Donald Trump. He's like the only person in modern times that has moved the narrative for the media more than the media has moved the narrative for him. He controls them. Elon Musk is decent at that too. Kanye West is decent. There's a reason why those names come together really naturally. Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Kanye West, because they're guys they're unpredictable. It's stereotype, but they break the mold. They're a bull in a china shop, and it's difficult for the media to grapple with them and set the national narrative with them because they're always catching them from out of left field. So the media has to lay the groundwork for everything for every major political happening. You need the media and you need the universities. You need these organizations, the NGOs, which are the fronts for the universities. You need all of these forces all working together to get elected, to even really have a meaningful campaign. The media, the social media era has kind of changed that a little bit. It's kind of flattened that playing field. People can get directly to the people without going through the media companies. But what that reveals is that the media companies don't exist for the sake of publicity. The media companies exist for the sake of narrative control. So you can't just replace them by getting publicity a different way, because it's not the publicity that gets you the power. It's the support from the establishment. If the establishment does not support you, you can't get into power with the exception of the rule, with the exception to the rule that was Donald Trump. He managed to do it because he had just the perfect coalescence of phenomena all happening at the same time that facilitated that process. And I think a major thing that helped him was the fact that the Clinton campaign targeted him as the person they wanted to run against. They missed the boat that badly. They thought he was the one to run against because they're that out of touch with the American people. So they actively promoted him. Just read the WikiLeaks emails. They actively promoted him prior to 2016 because they were like, he would be the one who'd be easiest to win against. And so like that sort of thing is more lucky than anything else. I mean, you could say maybe that's his master brand, that he set himself up as being the unlikely guy. So they would pick him and then he'd sneak. But like I don't really think that's the case. I think that the guy just kind of lucked out. But you know, there's like the power of positive thinking. There's all these dynamics that like he's working the energy of the universe to operate on his behalf, or at least he has. And let me go back. Let me take a drink here.
And what Matt is saying is that he is 1,000% sure that.
So when you see how this system works, when you see that these guys are in cahoots with, working in collaboration with the same CEOs and investors, major investors that are, if you start tracing all the way up through all the different companies to their parent corporations and parent corporations and parent corporations, eventually you get the people at the very, very top. You could say there's, depending on how far out but basically there's like 50 people that ultimately run the world. They're the head of all the different companies, and they interface directly with the most powerful heads of state. And they're the ones who effectively set the narrative and run the world. And they are all in lockstep right now. They are all talking, they're speaking, and they're acting in lockstep. That is why the media have been in lockstep throughout this whole COVID thing, throughout Black Lives Matter, throughout Antifa, all this stuff. This is why this stuff is coordinated. Because ultimately, the most powerful people in the room all want the same thing. So what is it that they want? Well, as a sidebar, to touch on the Matt Gaetz thing, the reason that he is suddenly being targeted the way he is because he's politically effective. He's a threat to the establishment because he doesn't play ball with them totally. He's a wild card who can't be predicted, he can't be controlled. And there's all this, I've mentioned in the past, there's all this populist right-wing energy. I think it was on the Counterflow episode with Buck Johnson, the interview I did with him, where he asked me about the populist right-wing energy. And whoever can capture that will have probably the power to change the direction of the world. And he's a potential candidate. I don't think he would be the guy, but he's at least a candidate. In that he's in the same ballpark as Rand Paul, kind of the way the media sees him that way, but he's not really. But then like Ron DeSantis, or I don't know, like some other people, Kristi Noem, people have talked about her that way. Tucker Carlson. These are all different people who have, they have a broad base of support, and they have the personalities and the inclination to be the the one who really starts rallying that right-wing energy into something that could accomplish something. So they're the targets. They're the people that need to be put down. You're seeing it with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert. They're being targeted the same way, but they can be a lot more aggressive with them because they're so off the reservation. They're completely flying, like marching to the beat of their own drum. So that discordance there is jarring to people, and people are much more tolerant of the massive hate campaigns that they're orchestrating against them. But Gaetz is a little more toward the mainstream. He's rebellious, and he's hardcore MAGA guy, but he's not like a major threat. But so he has to be taken out. They're working through each of these people. It's just a matter of time before you get something like this against Ron DeSantis. So they need to take him out. They need to take out Matt Gaetz before he gets too big for his britches. They need to protect themselves in 2024 and going forward. They need to control the message, keep the message locked down. And now what they need to do is they need to purge official government positions of anybody who's not loyal to the party. They have, with this last election, time shadowy cabal, go watch our episode with that in the title. They took control of the political system. Now there is no meaningful opposition to them within their range of view. So they're just going to gradually pick off the people, starting with the people who are the greatest threat and just winnowing their way all the way down. Matt Gaetz is on the chopping block right now. So how to take him out? Well, it just so happens that he's an attractive, gregarious, alpha male type of guy, and he likes to use those traits. And so he's been pretty sexually profligate, and it's now that creates a perfect basis to usher in the Me Too thing, because now this is a powerful man. It's a Brett Kavanaugh treatment. This is a powerful man abusing his position to be sexually inappropriate. And it's funny, like we've talked about this thing about how the wokeism is a Christian movement. That this guy's been sexually deviant, so he has to be crushed. This is a witch that has to be burned. He's sexually deviant. They're operating from the Christian operating system. They've just got corrupted code. So why not kill two birds with one stone? Because these elites happen to have some funny habits. These guys, the like 50 people who run the world and the circles out from them, there's a good number of them that have some funny habits. So they need to be taken out. They need to get that narrative and do away with it somehow. But now it has broken out into the public consciousness. It's being taken seriously. People are like, there's probably something to that. Satanic pedophile ring seemed crazy when Alex Jones was talking about it. But now, after the events of the last few years, people are a lot more willing to believe it. And it's getting to the point where they can no longer deny it. It's just a matter of time. Like the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, like that, like all these little data points, the story is just waiting to come back again, and it needs to be put down. But they can't just explain it away. They have to provide an outlet. So what they are going to do is they are going to frame their biggest threats, who they can, like Matt Gaetz. So now the whole satanic pedophile ring, they're going to say, yeah, there is sex trafficking happening within our government. There are pedophiles preying on underage women, underage girls. And look, Matt Gaetz, he did. Look, Roger Stone, they worked together. Trump with the Russians and the prostitutes peeing on Obama's bed, like all that stuff. This is a super easy narrative to piece together. And they're getting to the point where they control the narrative enough and things are starting to move fast enough that they don't even have to have the story perfectly put together. They just kind of have to have like 3 to 5 big headlines with their important points. Let people kind of connect the dots in their heads and just move on. And just Matt Gaetz gets tossed aside. Maybe he gets prosecuted. Maybe he gets assassinated. Whatever. Something's going to happen to him. We don't care. Full steam ahead. And now you have just put the satanic pedophile ring story to bed. You don't have to worry about it. It was Matt Gaetz. He was the ringleader. See? He did it. Roger Stone is involved. Who else? Like anybody. Just attach someone to it. Now, like, how easy is it to just like manufacture some texts or whatever you need to do? Just put the story together. Have the NSA do something here or whatever. There's a reporter for Washington Post, Josh Rogan. He's had multiple times now. He just did a tweet thread about this. He something about like he had just hung up the phone with his wife or something like that, and he would get a call back on his phone, and it would say that it was from his wife. And when he answered the phone, it was a federal government agent working for CISA, the cybersecurity and infrastructure organization, the one that said that this was the most secure election in history. It's an agent for them who has no idea why he's calling them. He's like, I don't have any idea why I'm talking to you. Just doesn't know. And when he starts asking questions, the guy gets nervous and hangs up. So he's like, okay, so is CISA monitoring reporters, monitoring journalists' phone calls? So like, people need to be prepared for some really wild shit over the next few years. Like, they're getting bold. Like you said, it's not that the mask is dropping, it's that they don't need it anymore. They're just taking it off. But they're moving to purge the opposition. We're moving to a one-party state and really a one-party world. They're making their gambit for the entire planet. Because if you can get absolute stranglehold control over the U.S. government and the U.S. media, you effectively control the world. The rest of the world are effectively vassal states of the United States. Russia and China are not even Russia. China is the biggest threat. China is the biggest potential threat. But you don't have to take over the whole Chinese country. You just have to take over key leaders. You just have to get the Chinese government was established by Americans, effectively, people who are trained in America. Like Mao went to an Ivy League school. Mao, I've read very compelling theories that Mao was basically just a puppet who was put in place, who was trained by the Ivy League schools and then put in place. Whether it's true or not, people don't understand that you don't have to conquer the entire nation. You just have to pick off a couple important people in influential spots, make sure that they're playing ball, and then you're good. You want to retain the look like there's an opposition, because you get this Hegelian dialectic. You get the thesis and the synthesis, and they working, whatever. You get that whole dynamic if you have an opposition. So they're going to retain the opposition because they don't want people to know that they have a one world state until they do. And then it's like, oh, what are you going to do? They're there. So that's Matt Gaetz. That's Klaus Schwab and Matt Gaetz. So there's other corporations that are doing stuff right now, but I want to take a break here for a second and see if Steven has anything to weigh in on.
I'm already just living out as if there's a one world government, and so I'm just gonna let you guys know how it goes. But like that's just kind of how I've been living for like a few months.
Steven,
and I'm just like sinking into it, I'm getting used to it, and it's not so bad. So, whenever you guys come around to that idea, I'll be here waiting for you.
As the kids say, Steven is hella black-pilled.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm hella reality pilled.
It's funny. There was a really, really good interview today that you guys should definitely, as soon as you're done with this show, you should go watch or listen to. Jack Murphy on his podcast. He had Michael Anton, who used to be a member of the Trump administration. He worked for the national security something or other, and he was a national security. He was a national security advisor of some type, and Curtis Yarvin. The two of them, and they like, it's like an hour and a half in. They've basically just been discussing like kind of their first topic, and they've been arguing back and forth. And they're both super well versed in philosophy and history, and especially of the 19th century. And so they're just arguing back and forth. And these are two dissident, right wing, highly educated personalities that
Wait, Jack Murphy?
No, like, Michael Anton.
Michael Anton.
So okay. Jack Murphy's hosting it, but it's Michael Anton and Curtis Yarvin.
Okay.
And Michael Anton kind of he still kind of has the he's very much right wing, very much dissident right wing, even very he's not a monarchist necessarily, but he would want to restore like the Roman Republic kind of. Like he wants like a powerful republic is what he's still kind of hoping for. So he's still got a little liberal in there, but he's very much a dissident nationalist right wing type of guy. And then Yarvin obviously is like, there's nobody who's further right than Yarvin. And he's in my opinion, obviously I'm a little biased. I like Michael Anton, but obviously I'm a bigger fan of Yarvin, and he takes him to task. He's really working him. Yarvin's just operating at a level deeper than anybody else. And every conversation that he has, it's like you're having a conversation with a supercomputer. So anyways, definitely go listen to that. Go check that out, because I haven't finished it yet, but they get an hour and a half in and they're still arguing about pretty much the same subject. So if you're into that sort of stuff, then you'll I think it's over 3 hours long.
I fantasize about having Curtis Yarvin on this show and just exactly how I'd handle it, because I think it would be
like what you've told me before.
I would make it real weird. Yeah, that's all I can tell you. Just on the outside chance we ever get him on. We know, Curtis. We know. Just like all these obscure references. Yeah, Curtis. I know that you're probably gonna, just to save time, because you can be a little. Well, we all know that. Have you guys ever heard of? Yes, we have, Curtis, but our audience is a bunch of dumb fucks. You really need to explain it to them, because they probably haven't. So if you would just avoid asking the question and just kind of give a little bit of background before you start, going off. Matthew and I, of course, obviously know what you're talking about, but our idiot listeners, you really need to fill them in. Yeah. It would be so fun.
I wonder,
could
we get, I'm so like, could we get him to just get so frustrated he hung up on us on a live interview?
Yeah, but I also think he would kind of be into it. I don't know. And he's kind of a dick. Like if we set it up, if we erase this episode, did it right, and if we set it up like beforehand, and just like, hey, you want to just do a weird thing? I think he might just be into it.
Yeah, I think he would too. Like, because I would want to create that scenario for the sake of because the audience would die. The audience would be in agony. Yeah. They would be absolutely crippled with horror as it happened. It would be so much fun to troll people that way. It would be
a lot of fun. Oh, it'd be so fun.
Oh, but like, I don't want to offend the guy. Like, I want the guy to, obviously we basically dedicated our entire podcast to him. So, yeah.
So fun though. So fun.
Okay. Anyways, so back to the subject at hand here. So This is like I'm saying, this is their opportunity to they're taking an attempt here at taking Gaetz out, at staining his name, and at shifting the narrative on the elite pedophile rings, the sex trafficking in major institutions. The other thing that they're working on doing is, as I said, taking out political competition. They want an entire GOP of Mitt Romneys. That's what they're working toward. They're trying to get to that point where you have these guys who are they're conservative and respectable. We believe in decency. We believe in all the most important American ethics except nationalism. Nationalism is indecent. Those are the words of the commoners. We must be decent liberals here. We're classical liberals. Come to our table. Let us discuss in the marketplace of ideas, and we'll come to the best conclusions that'll work in the best interest of all of us, and will respect our sacred democracy. Mike
That's how
Pence.
it works, man.
They want Mike Pence. They just want a whole GOP full of these guys because it will retain this appearance of, there's just principled opposition, but we must compromise. We must reach across the aisle, and that's the best way to have a one-story state that looks like a two-story state, and to use another Yarvinism. So, but I think there's a larger game at work here. I think there's a bigger play, and there's this thing that Klaus Schwab has been talking about for a while, known as stakeholder capitalism. Now, there's a great signal right now of something that's working toward this direction. I think you're definitely reading a lot into it, so it takes a lot of context, kind of. But I have a theory, and that is Delta Airlines, American Airlines, Coca-Cola, and MLB are the organizations that I'm aware of so far who have these are corporations, they have proactively come out in vehement criticism of the recent election bills in Georgia and in Texas, claiming that these are voter suppression laws. These are the attempts by the GOP legislatures in those states to try to strike back against what happened in 2020 and try to prevent it from ever happening again. So they're trying to increase transparency and limit the possibilities of tampering and fraud and all that sort of thing. And of course, if we don't allow the shadowy cabal to fortify the future elections, then we're engaging in vote suppression. We hate minorities. We're trying to create our white supremacist heaven here or something. So that's obviously the framing here, and these companies are very proactively coming out in opposition and saying, we do not believe, these don't stand for our values. It's like, what? Why do you care? What? Who cares if it does? What? So the MLB even went so far as to they're removing the All-Star game from Georgia. As long as that bill's there, they will not play the All-Star game in Georgia. They're happy to go play games in communist Cuba, but they won't play in Georgia because Georgia doesn't want a shadowy cabal to fortify their election. This is a massive change in behavior by American corporations. American corporations have been activists before, but they've never been this flagrantly activist. And the easy narrative that people are going to fall for is they're going to say, oh, well, they're just trying to make sure they don't get canceled. They're saying, because there's this idea that you can get canceled if you're not vocal enough. It's not enough to be just be passively anti-racist. You have to be actively anti-racist. So the people say, oh, these are just companies just trying to be actively anti-racist. And that may be the story that they're telling some of the goons within their organization just to sucker them into playing ball. But the reason that these companies are acting like this is because we're watching a shift. And I've predicted this shift before, and I'm going to keep predicting it until I find out that I'm right or wrong. The companies are going to start moving toward replacing governments. The narrative that we're going to start hearing, the groundwork that's being laid, is for a narrative that says these governments are too corrupt. They're filled with corruption. Everyone's getting bought off. There's elite sex trafficking rings within them. They're violating the rights of private citizens by outlawing vaccine passports. They're trampling on citizens' rights by releasing these lockdowns without full vaccination. We don't have full vaccination. People can't have their freedom back yet. If people get their freedom back yet, we lose our carrot. We can't entice them to get their vaccinations. So, this is the groundwork that's being laid. to actually remove power from formal government structures. And you can see already exactly who is going to jump all aboard that messaging just like a gigantic snack.
Oh, boy.
Limited government. We can't trust the government to do all of these things. If the government's
Finally, they're listening.
Exactly. Look at that. The third party was successful.
About that, I was imagining these little goofball libertarians just marching right behind, just thinking that they're really. Yeah, that's fun.
So, yep. I mean, obviously,
you did it. You guys did it. Good job.
Right. Yes. You defeated the state. The state does not exist any longer. What you're getting
canceled. Yeah, it's all the if you came to the Libertarian Party or whatever within the past, I don't know, year and a half, I would say, you are going to be having the best decade ever, Queen.
And what this does then is the dumber Republicans, conservatives, or whatever, they're Republican or conservative because they are attracted to people who pay lip service to limited government. So if you start seeing these corporations talking about corruption in government, needing to weed out corruption and basically take away, I don't know exactly how they're going to do it, but they're going to be talking about the need to give sovereignty away, like take sovereignty away from the government and not let the government be as influential because it's betrayed its duties. It's doing unconstitutional things and for the best interests of people at large, for the best interests of society, we need corporations to start playing a much more active role in caring for their communities. And it starts with like privatizing various different things and putting them under the control of NGOs and major corporations. And then they will run them. They'll facilitate all of these things because they can. Like they don't need that. Obviously, the corporations run the government. The government operates at the behest of the corporations who are operating at the behest of the experts who are operating at the behest of the NGO, like all the way up. But why have the corporations funnel through this government when the corporations can just do it themselves? Have a private city. Why not have a private state? Just have the state be owned by Apple. Have the state be owned by Google or Charter or whatever the parent company of AT&T. Like, have these people start buying up neighborhoods. Bill Gaetz is apparently the largest owner of farmland in America.
That makes me sleep great at night. That's great.
This is the direction that we're moving. Now, you could tie all these things together and be like, okay, yeah, but those are some pretty the lines connecting those dots are awful. Those are kind of flimsy. Sure, maybe, but it would be too hard or whatever. You're suckering in all these liberty conservatives who are going to be like, yeah, they're going to back all this stuff and be like, oh, we don't need Trump after all. Look at this. We got limited government. So, everything's great. And you sucker all them in. So, like, you might say that this is trying to connect dots that are too far apart. But remember how I started this out? I talked about the NGOs, the Klaus Schwabs, these people, their relationship to the government. That when they talk about it, that's a signal to you that eventually it's going to be government policy. It's just a matter of time. Stakeholder capitalism. This is a bugaboo, a big, big deal for both Klaus Schwab and, among other people, another guy named Mark Benioff, who is the founder, I think, and CEO of Salesforce, and he is very actively, vocally political. I'm waiting for him to run. I think he may try to run for president in 2024. He's the type of guy he's going to run for governor of California or something like that. And he's very, very populist and very, very leftist. Very leftist. In like the nastiest Silicon Valley elite sort of way. And he uses this kind of rhetoric all the time. He's a big proponent of stakeholder capitalism. Jamie Dimon, the chairman and CEO of JP Morgan Chase, he's another guy who talks very much like this. You're seeing Tim Cook start to talk very much like this. Mark Zuckerberg talks like this, very much speaking to the necessity for businesses, corporations to operate to the benefit of their stakeholders. So not their shareholders, their stakeholders. So you might say, well, what's a stakeholder? Stakeholder capitalism, this is from Investopedia. Stakeholder capitalism is a system in which corporations are oriented to serve the interests of all their stakeholders. Among the key stakeholders are customers, suppliers, employees, shareholders, and local communities. Under this system, a company's purpose is to create long-term value and not to maximize profits and enhance shareholder value at the cost of other stakeholder groups. You just described a government. That is a government. You gave it a different fancy name, but a government is a corporation oriented to serve the interests of all their stakeholders, which is the customer, suppliers, employees, shareholders, and local community. That's every single person. You're saying that corporations are oriented to serve every single person. Yeah. That means if a corporation is serving every single person, that means every single person is their customer. That's a government. They're describing a government. So these are their it says key takeaways. Corporations should serve the interests of other stakeholders, focuses on long-term value creation, not merely enhancing shareholder value, was the norm in the U.S. until Milton Friedman argued that corporate executives are only beholden to owners or shareholders. And I don't want to go down that rabbit hole today because there's some that's right about that and there's some that's wrong about that. And really it doesn't just accept it. It's like it doesn't benefit. It's not something to get hung up on. And supporters of it believe that it should replace shareholder primacy. So I want to read a little bit more here on this, but first I want to go read this this article that was written for Time as part of the Great Reset. There's a series on the Great Reset written by Klaus Schwab, October 22, 2020, titled "A Better Economy is Possible, but We Need to Reimagine Capitalism to Do It." So he talks about COVID and the response and how society operated in response to everything related to COVID. And let's see here. He says, technological advances often take place in a monopolized economy and are used to prioritize one company's profits over societal progress. The same economic system that created so much prosperity in the golden age of American capitalism in the 1950s and 60s, the golden age of American capitalism in 1950s and 60s, is now creating inequality and climate change. And the same political system that enabled our global progress and democracy after World War II now contributes to societal discord and discontent. Each was well-intended but had unintended negative consequences. Isn't it interesting that over the past year and a half, we've gotten no conversation about climate change? Nobody talks about climate change anymore. It's just not it's just like if someone brings up, they're like, oh yeah, 10 years to save the world and then we're going to all drown. And if we start working on it now, it doesn't matter. We're all going to die anyways. So apparently we need to lock down and try to save everyone's life, get zero deaths whatsoever, lock down absolutely, so that we can survive on a planet that's going to burn up in 10 years. We're going to all drown in 10 years.
Can it be sooner? Is there any chance?
No, Steven. White pill. Or the clear pill, really. You know why they call it the clear pill? Because it's empty.
I think I have the clear pill.
So they don't talk about climate change anymore because they replaced it. They don't need it. Climate change is entirely a depopulate the earth movement. It's a death cult. Well, what death cult happens to be dominating the world right now? What need do they have for climate change? It's sitting there. It's waiting for them at any point that they need it. I guarantee you, eventually we're going to get conversations about how the timeline was pushed back because of lockdowns. Lockdowns and the decreased economic activity
Yep.
is what gave us the jump. We got ahead of it, and now you got Biden talking about how he's going to green energy the entire U.S. military. The entire U.S. military is all going to be off of fossil fuels. This is like everything is setting up absolutely perfect for the people who are positioned to most benefit from it. And it just so happens that those people are also the ones influencing it the most. So back to Klaus Schwab. So he's talking about how quickly the vaccine process happened and how great that was. So he says, looking forward, there was strong cooperation between governments and business to secure the funds needed for vaccine development and distribution. Looking forward, such virtuous instincts can become a feature of our economic systems rather than a rare exception. Rather than chasing short-term profits or narrow self-interest, companies could pursue the well-being of all people and the entire planet. This does not require a 180-degree turn. Corporations don't have to stop pursuing profits for their shareholders. That's the thing that someone would say if they are a shareholder in a lot of companies. They only need to shift to a longer-term perspective on their organization and its mission, looking beyond the next quarter or fiscal year to the next decade and generation. Why stop there? Why aren't we looking on to the next generation or the next or the next? There's no reason to stop at one. Why don't you just look to forever? Look to infinity. Maersk, I don't know how you pronounce that, Maersk, a Danish shipping giant, for example, divested its oil and gas divisions and is focusing on providing sustainable shipping solutions. Reacting to increasing pressure from climate activists and younger generations. See, they're reacting to the pressure like they have to. The kids asked them to. BlackRock asked the CEOs of companies it invested in to more explicitly pursue environmental, social, and governance goals. Those decisions may hurt short-term profits for itself as a shareholder, but it maximizes long-term returns in a world where people increasingly revolt against a system they perceive as unfair. Let me continue reading. Building such a virtuous economic system is not a utopian ideal. Most people, including business leaders, investors, and community leaders, have a similar attitude about their role in the world and the lives of others. Most people want to do good and believe that doing so will ultimately benefit everyone, including a company's shareholders. But what's been missing in recent decades is a clear compass to guide those in leading positions in our society and economy. A clear compass to guide those in leading positions in our society and economy to motivate them to do good and do things that will ultimately benefit everyone. What is he describing? He's describing a religion. He's saying society is missing a religion, and we need to bring one back.
Gotta have a compass.
Gotta have a compass. Gotta have a compass. For the past 30 to 50 years, the neoliberalist ideology has increasingly prevailed in large parts of the world. This approach centers on the notion that the market knows best, that the business of business is business, and that government should refrain from setting clear rules for the functioning of markets. Those dogmatic beliefs have proved wrong, but fortunately we are not destined to follow them. In September, my belief that a more virtuous capitalist system was possible was reaffirmed by an initiative of the Forum's International Business Council, led by Brian Moynihan of Bank of America. Doesn't this sound like he's like describing like a what do you call it? Like a council where these different princes representing these different nations came together and presented a proposal, and then like the different kingdoms, rather, princes from different kingdoms came in to this council, made a proposal, everyone accepted it, and they took it back. Like that's what that's the dynamic he's describing here. So they released the stakeholder capitalism metrics, non-financial metrics and disclosures that will be added on a voluntary basis to companies' annual reporting in the next 2 to 3 years, making it possible to measure their progress over time. What happens if they don't keep up with these? It's voluntary. No one's forcing you to. You're welcome. You just get yourself involved if you believe in it, if you share the vision. If you don't, then you'll be relentlessly attacked by the press and people will come burn your stores down. But just remember, it's voluntary. You only have to join us if you want. If they overreact, you know how kids are these days. They just kind of get riled up about something that they care about and they go burn a store down or two. But, just Can't help it. It'd be best if you just voluntarily join us, and then your store won't get burned down. Doing so requires answering questions such as, what is the gender pay gap in company X? How many people of diverse backgrounds were hired and promoted? What progress has the company made toward reducing its greenhouse gas emissions? How much did the company pay in taxes globally and per jurisdiction? And what did the company do to hire and train employees? The initial idea that companies should try and optimize for more than just short-term profits came around 2016 from a handful of business leaders who wanted the private sector to play a role in achieving the UN Sustainability Development Goals. So the UN, I believe the UN Sustainable Development Goals were something for governments. These were something, it's the United Nations, not the United Corporations, the United Nations. The United Nations put together this plan. A handful of business leaders say the private sector needs to get involved. The private sector needs to operate on the same territory. Then he talks about Greta Thunberg, Me Too, Black Lives Matter. They all added to the sense of urgency. How convenient. Amazing. How amazing that all of these diverse sectors of society were all on the same wavelength at the exact same time. The UN and the private sector and college kids were all in the exact same wavelength, talking about the exact same message at the exact same time. How convenient.
Yeah.
The Compass told them.
You're right.
Right.
Emergent.
Yeah. Where did this compass come from? I wonder. Maybe we could get into that sometime. Where the compass come from? So I don't. You can go read this if you want to read the rest of it. But what he ends asking for is that he says, in a world where pessimism is increasingly the order of the day and narrow and short-term self-interest is still alluring, initiatives like these demonstrate that a more inclusive and sustainable model is possible. It is up to us to replicate and follow such an approach. When that happens, those who follow the path of stakeholder capitalism will soon find that it leads to a more inclusive and sustainable economy for all. If you've listened to any James Lindsay, your it's a communist bells should be just bang, 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 just going absolutely bonkers. Because he is speaking the language of communism while talking about needing to create a religion that governs the world led by businesses. He's describing global privatized communist government. That's his mission. He's not explicit. He's implicitly laying that out right here, giving all of the details, the whole game plan. He gave the whole game away in this one piece. I didn't even read the whole thing. He gave the whole game away. This is the guy who founded the World Economic Forum, the institution that predicted the coronavirus and what would be done with it, and that's advocating the Great Reset that all the world leaders are all championing and repeating right now. The playbook is in front of us. We can look at it and see where it's going. And libertarians are going to get suckered into this like no one's business. They are going to become the marching army or a very small part of it, but they're going to join the army of the New World Order. You just say it.
The second you started talking about this, I was thinking, it's like, okay, so you take progressivism, that's like a right-wing takeover of a left-wing movement. And so I was trying to do the math on this. I'm like, so this is a right-wing people who took over the left-wing movement takeover of communism masquerading as a right-wing with right-wing principles somehow. Is that what I can't?
I don't know. I was always really bad at calculus.
Yeah, but do you know what I mean though?
Yeah.
It's just like, it's like taking all this like private blah blah blah, capitalism, and using these languages, these buzzwords and stuff like that, but ultimately it ends up at global communism.
Yes.
So I'm just trying to it's taken from Yeah,
It's like you
I'm
see
trying to
what's
do the
going
math
in and
on
you
it.
see what's coming out, but you're trying to figure out what's
Yeah,
happening in between.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Good for them.
It's like I
They're
put
killing it.
gas in there and exhaust came out, but I don't know what made the gas turn into exhaust.
Yeah, they're doing great. They're doing great. Good
Okay,
job.
so we kind of touched on this a little bit. What does it look like in practice? This is back on Investopedia. It says stakeholder capitalism can either be an ideology adopted by leaders at individual companies or a model enforced by governments through laws and regulations. Some of the ways companies can independently demonstrate a commitment to stakeholder capitalism: paying fair wages, reducing the CEO worker pay ratio, ensuring safety in the workplace, lobbying for higher tax rates and avoiding tax loopholes, providing good customer service, engaging in honest marketing practices, investing in local communities, and preventing environmental damage. Just like it's it's like the Democrat platform, basically the Democrat Party platform, just the whole thing right there. So like when you hear these things, when you hear any of those, hopefully now you have you have a framework for like understanding what role those are playing. That these aren't just policies that are being discussed in a vacuum. This isn't just some random conversation that's happening here. This is part of a well orchestrated movement that's being seeded. It's being astroturfed, and it's been being astroturfed for decades. This is the full realization of the Gramscian long march through the institutions. This is the realization of the application of Saul Alinsky and Herbert Marcuse. This is it being realized. And the whole cathedral is all working in lockstep on it. So the world is going to quickly split into the people who recognize this and don't want to be involved, and those who don't see it or just want to be involved. It's going to split. And part of the conversation between Yarvin and Anton, I want to got to get out of here in just a couple more minutes because I got to make sure I get down for bath time for Eastwood tonight. But the conversation between Yarvin and Anton, in it they talk about what it means to be a legitimate government. And Anton, he's still got that lib to him, kind of. He's a little more idealistic, and which is kind of funny to say for like a super right-wing nationalistic dissident, but he's still got just that tinge of it where he still romanticizes the idea of America. He still kind of has that to him a little bit. He said explicitly he would love to restore 1776. So like he still sees the roots of America as not as libertarian, but he sees them as romantic, and he wants to restore. So his idea, he quotes, he talks about he comes from the background of Aristotle, and he looks at it as more that like it's having the power to rule, but then it's also having like the divine right to rule based on your quality as an institution. And if you're corrupt, if you have all of the power to rule, but you're corrupt and you don't have the responsibility to go with that power, then you're not a legitimate government. So he said, right now, our government is not a legitimate government. And Yarvin disagreed with him vehemently. And he said, in essence, he's coming from, he's the Machiavellian thing. He said, basically, if you are ruling, you are a legitimate government. By definition. The definition of a legitimate government is a government that rules. And if you get overthrown, then you are an illegitimate government. And the government that overthrew you is a legitimate government. And I said, as I was listening to that, I tweeted out something here. I said, the right of revolution is the ability to successfully execute the revolution. That's all it comes down to. For you to have a right to do it, you have to be able to do it. And if you're able to do it, you're the one who gets to decide whether it's your right or not. Because by orchestrating the revolution, you become the sovereign. Now, I wouldn't advocate a revolution. I don't want to see a revolution happen because it would be very, very messy. What I want to see is I just want to see a new system that works to the benefit of everyone. There you go, YouTube. I just want to see a new system that works to the benefit of everyone. And if that system is run publicly, someone figures out how to engineer it and it works, great. As long as it creates liberty, great. Works for me. If it's private, okay, cool. That works too. You know, what I don't want is I don't want a privatized communist government globally, nationally, wherever. I don't want that. And in order to, what this has created for us is there's an opportunity in here. It's possible that these people are out over their skis. It's that they've overestimated themselves. It's possible that there's an opportunity to just get your toe right in the door. And while they're in the process of privatizing businesses, or privatizing nations, privatizing cities, counties, states, nations, whatever. While that transition is happening, there's a possibility of taking our own. If enough people understood what was happening and they were on board and they were focused and diligent and responsible in their efforts, they could put together the money and the resources and the lawyers and whatever else that you would need to privatize a given region. There's this new city on the island, I think it's called Roatan, off the coast of Honduras. The city, it's a privatized city called Prospera. And the guys like Peter Thiel's involved in the financing of it. And it turns out a friend of mine on Facebook is actually best friends with the chief of staff of the company. And so I think that we're going to be able to get the chief of staff and or the CEO on either our show or Wealth, Power, and Influence or something. I think that we might be able to have a conversation with them. I think that would be awesome because I love this idea of just saying, taking this land, buying this land and saying, new experiment time. We're going to privatize the governance over this region. And anybody who's interested in participating in this, come on board. You have to engineer it all out. You have to figure out how you're going to do it. It's going to take a lot of mind power. It's going to take a lot of engineering and thinking and working and innovating. And we may not even have the technology for it yet. But that's the future of liberty. That's where it lies. That's the opportunity. While this transition is happening, they're trying to they're doing the Indiana Jones where he's trying to pull the what is it, a skull or something? He's trying to pull it off and he's trying to put the sack of dirt on top of it or something. While they're trying to execute this, there's the opportunity to just go and just pull out our little slice. And people still are not very well tuned for genocide. They're not really interested in sanctioning that. They don't want to know about it. So if people act swiftly and smartly and are very clear that their desire is to be peaceful and to govern themselves, and they just deal with the world as it is, take the situation exactly as it is, and just get the best case scenario out of it, I think it's realistic over the next, I don't know how long it's going to take, 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, I don't know. But I know that seems like the best case scenario right now. That seems like the best angle to go. But we need people focused on it. We need people looking at it, thinking about it, investing in it. Ultimately, it's going to take money. That's what all of it all takes money. The more money, the better. Because the other option is Mars. And that seems like a lot less realistic to me. So this is where I've said before that the Liberty Movement's future is in business, education, and entertainment. You have to entertain. You got to make people laugh. You got to make people happy. You have to be able to make people happy and endear yourself to them. And then you need to be able to educate them. You need to indoctrinate them with your values. However you're going to do that. Peacefully is best, is ideal. If your values involve indoctrinating non-peacefully, then we don't have the same values. But then finally, it's a business. Like all of it, you have to be making money. And this is the message of Wealth, Power, and Influence. You have to control the source of that money. And it has to be mobile. Because if it's not, if you're bound to a specific region, a specific polity, and it has a direction you don't want to head, and you don't have the ability to extricate yourself and relocate to one that fits your values, that's on you. The signs are all out there. The writing is very, very clearly on the wall. It's all, you have to be willing to believe it. But once you believe it, once you realize it, once it clicks, everything starts to click. It all starts to come together. And this ball is rolling. People are starting to think this way. People are starting to be motivated from their malaise. They're kind of rising from their slumber. And so our goal with this show is to do whatever we can to point people in that direction, to get people thinking about how a society like that could govern itself. How could you exist in a sovereign region at peace with people around you, but also retain your sovereignty? How does that happen? The country that's come the closest to it right now is probably Liechtenstein. And that's a pretty good model. It's a monarchy that funds the majority of the government privately through their own wealth. And their monarch, Prince Hans Adam, I think is his name, is an ANCAP. He's friends with Hoppe. And then they also have like a parliamentary process as well. Like, that's a pretty cool model. Let's look at that. Let's see where are the bugs. If we apply that model, where are the bugs? Where's the potential for the weak points, the potential for corruption, the ways that bad code can be introduced, and we wind up back here again? So like this is what we want to do with this show. We're going to be creating a community where people can come together and join us in this, join us in these conversations, and start brainstorming toward this. I'm pretty excited about where we're headed and what we're going to accomplish with this. But yeah, I think that's kind of the mission. That's the mission. That's the goal. You have anything you want to say?
You get to hear me do my Jason Stapleton impression
in the private
that same group.
Right.
And let me tell you, it'll be worth every penny.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
It ain't bad. It's only getting better.
Alrighty. Well, this has been a good episode. Looks like it is after 7. So I am going to jettison. You can get us on YouTube if you're watching this live. You're probably on YouTube or Facebook. You must be on YouTube or Facebook because that's the only place where it's playing live. Right now, I'm porting everything over to Odyssey, so you can look for us there. It'd just be called King Pilled. I'm going to try and get everything set up there, and we'll start streaming there as well. So if you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, then if you haven't subscribed to us on Odyssey, go do it as soon as you can at whatever point you're listening to this. And then we'll be out on all the podcatchers soon. We're still working out some kinks in the back end. And then you can follow me on Twitter at RealKingPilled. Steven doesn't want you to follow him on Twitter at Messina Inc.
Don't follow. There's too much. There's too much. I've kind of reached the pinnacle of fame, being retweeted, and quoted and stuff. It's just I can't handle anything more. So just do me a favor. Don't follow me. Unfollow me if you follow me on Twitter. Maybe also might not be a bad idea. And you'll just you'll see my thoughts. When people retweet the retweets of the retweets, you'll see it. But please don't follow me.
Please don't follow him at Messina Inc. And then you can follow me on Gab too. I think I'm at Kingpilled on Gab. I still haven't set it all up.
I love that I'm so happy you're on Gab.
That's what I was going to say, that I'm going to be transitioning my political stuff from Facebook over to Gab. And I think that as soon as we get streaming on Odyssey, then we'll stop streaming to Facebook. It'll just be YouTube and Odyssey. And then I'm going to move all my political posting over to Gab. So if you follow me on Facebook and you like my political stuff and everything, then go ahead and move over there. I'll be winnowing down my followers or my friends, and it'll just be family stuff. Just be posting private pictures of Eastwood.
How long? And I'm gonna say within 6 months as my guess, but until like your Gab profile picture is you with like a red hat that says "Make America a Colony Again" or something like that. Like,
yeah. How long until I'm like there? I'm like posing with a picture of a frog, of a Pepe frog.
It's happening.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
A crown. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to starting to dive in the fray on Gab. But for now, the majority of my posting happens on Twitter. So you can follow me there at RealKingPilled. And this has been fun. Do us a favor, like this video, like this stream, share the show, share the podcast, wherever it is. and subscribe to all of us, follow all of us, do all those things. And I guess I should say now, for people who are going back and listening to this later on, once we've got it up on the podcast, what is it you say? You want to leave us a comment and a 5-star rating, a review and a 5-star rating on iTunes. Do that for us as well. And then we will be back here again on Monday, something 12:30, 1 o'clock Pacific. And yeah, you got anything else you want to say?
That's it.
All right. Deuces.